Hi, my name is Oliver Johnson, and for my project, I tried to decentralize bushfire insurance in Australia. This project came about due to the incredible destruction wrought by bushfires in Australia, especially over the 2019-2020 period. You know, we saw 187,000 square kilometres burned, a billion native animals killed, 3,000 homes destroyed, 250,000 people told to evacuate, 40 people killed. Something in the order of 80% of Australians were affected by these bushfires in some way or another. And in Australia, according to the Productivity Commission, 94% of disaster efforts and money spent are made post-recovery in the form of insurance and emergency relief. So when the bushfires came around, $8.9 billion of insurance claims were made. This resulted in about $2.3 billion of insurance losses. So it's about a quarter, right? And that's when the premiums don't cover the insured amount for the asset. And you can see down in southern New South Wales, this is per postcode, some of these postcodes had in excess of $100 million of insurance losses. It's quite visible that traditional market participants were exposed to much higher risks than they were really aware of. And this points to two factors that we're trying to solve. The first is an underdeveloped reinsurance market for Australian catastrophe, and second, a lack of information to model the underlying risk of the insurance. So what does it mean to develop the market? Effectively, it just means to sell more insurance-linked securities. These securities that are linked to insurable events. The most popular and famous being catastrophe bonds. So an insurance company might agree to insure lots and lots of houses against storms, but they don't want to take on all that risk. So what they'll do is that they will package up all of these policies with similar risk profiles, put it into a special purpose vehicle, and then try on-sell it to investors. That way, they can collect a whole bunch more policies and premiums as long as they can find investors for it. Can we go direct from policyholder to investors by selling a cat bond or a catastrophe bond? And look, that is possible, but we have to remove the human assessor, right? So when you put in a claim, a human actually has to go out. And when these bushfires came around, humans went out and actually inspected the evidence and made assessments of how much damage was actually caused. And some of the delays on these claims were like 9 months, right? Imagine your house burning down, and then it wasn't until 9 months later that you actually got the payout for your insurance. This is what I was trying to solve. So can we replace the decisions that a human adjuster would make with a parameter that is instead highly correlated with the desired insured loss? This is called parametric insurance, and it's a bit of a bespoke tool. It's currently used in the real world, mainly in the Caribbean, for when storm surges get really high and you need some emergency relief. It's also sort of used with agricultural, like a bit of crop insurance. But effectively, you just base it off this parameter, and if a parameter is reached and it can be proven that it's been reached by, or trusted that it's been reached, then that is then a payout will be made. So, how do we get the information then that relates to the specific index that you want to track for a catastrophe bond? Well, it's going to depend on the available sensors. And in Australia, a whole bunch of research is currently happening right now to actually deploy these sort of sensors into the field. So, here's the overview of the architecture of my system. It's got three main components. The first one is the market maker. This is a very, very visual tool that investors and sponsors use to understand the bonds that they can create and the bonds that they can invest in. It also allows for a bit of a compromise communication interface so that if there isn't going to be a match on price, an engine can try and meet it. The second is the bond factory. This serves two purposes. One, it serves as the special purpose vehicle from the IRL example, where money, it's the place where money is held effectively in escrow until the transaction has actually taken place, i.e., the bond either expires or the index occurs, hits some threshold, and away you go, and the payment has to be made. And finally is the sensor server. And this was really interesting because I've ended up designing a microservices architecture that can scale up and down rapidly depending on the number of bonds that are currently alive. It's also containerized, which means that you can deploy it onto, wherever bare metal server sitting anywhere, point it to the same endpoints because the database is sitting within it, right? And then effectively achieve some sort of decentralization around the reporting of these desired indexes. Here's just the quick example of what the payout function looks like, where you've got Q is the index and TN is expiry time. T is a current time. So let me run you through exactly how it might work, or a singular flow, really. Investors and sponsors submit bids and asks to the bond matcher. Here they can choose the certain area that they want to actually buy or sell a bond in, and then they try to validate it. This sends a request to sensor repo, which actually checks if the selected area, how much of it is actually observable, because as the sensor network grows, it's a live thing, right? If a sensor is down, then it's unobservable. It then returns a set of sensors and suggested weights. The reason that we have a weight here is it sort of acts as a proxy for how much value should be placed on a certain sensor. At the moment, this is relatively arbitrary. We've got some certain rules around how likely a sensor is to fall silent, how accurate it is. For example, there are some satellites where there's like a certain row of pixels that consistently flash false positives for heat, and as a result, you can't really trust it along these certain latitudes. The final part of the system architecture here, you can really ignore the arrows. They were drawn in place for the conference talk, but the main thing is that the bond factory keeps a record of all the bonds that it creates, which means that it's very easy to look up what bonds are available by just checking the bond factory. And we use Ethereum to store these bonds because it also acts as a store of value. The real benefit of this project was just a demonstration that you can have parameter agnostic decentralized insurance, right? So Ether ISC, which is the largest insurer at the moment, or the largest decentralized insurer, they've only got two products. One's like flight insurance, and the other is crop insurance. Crop insurance is interesting because it's weather based, but the flight insurance one, not really that interesting because it's pretty clean data. The second one is the creation of a decentralized sensor validator network. This is the Docker container that I was talking about. The fact that you can pump this out and spin it up on any sort of bare metal, and it'll be able to observe the same endpoints. And finally is the secondary market reinsurance process. Because all the bonds are standardized, all you do is you just transfer the bonds into one person's wallet or one wallet, and that's how you bundle up and reinsure. It's really just that simple. It's baked in. So I approached the Department of Home Affairs and asked if I could access some of their emergency management data, and I've been in discussions with them, and that looks probably the most promising route to expand this work. Just get better access to quality sensor information. The other way that this work could be expanded is to have a good look at privacy assuredness, right? Because the one thing that happens when you buy home insurance through a large insurance company is that no one else knows aside from the insurance company. So returning to the base of this project, which zero knowledge proofs, would be quite interesting.